Hello, everybody. Today is January 23rd. It's about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in East Tennessee. So jump right in and see what's going on. If you haven't heard, Senate voted on cloture for Pete Hegseth. It's 51-49. Two out of the three suspects that I had prior listed voted not to advance his nomination, which is Murkowski and Collins. McConnell, who was the other one, I thought might vote no, voted obviously to advance him. So usually the cloture vote that ends, that's the procedural hurdle to go to the actual confirmation vote. If you're going to vote no for the person, you usually vote no for the cloture vote. So the votes, I believe, is going to be tomorrow night, Friday evening, the 24th, and he should be this. It'll probably be the same vote. Collins and Murkowski are not going to switch back, and I don't see McConnell or Curtis of Utah going, well, I'll vote for that and then not vote to confirm him. You would just vote no at that time. And plus, even if you got one more to vote no, you then have Vance for the tiebreaker. So I think that's good. So, there was last minute stories with Pete Hegseth and everything like that. So what's it really about? You hear these stories, Kavanaugh, all these other people, right? You never hear them, Democrats, right? Republicans even voted for Biden's cabinet members in many cases, okay? A matter of fact, Austin got a waiver because of his connections to Raytheon. So he gets a waiver because there was a statutory issue. That's okay. But we're going to believe rumors, unnamed sources, innuendos, and a disgruntled ex-wife. So, but what that does is, particularly with Murkowski is a big neocon, a big government Republican. She should be even a Democrat, but she comes from a Republican family. She got the seat from her father. Okay. She lost the primary, won on a write-in campaign with Democratic support. She basically lost the primary again, and then they went to a ranked choice voting. So to her, it's all about power. She's part of the system. She's part of the establishment. And these stories, what they really do is just give cover to particularly Murkowski, who wants to vote against Hegseth for the primary reason, some comments like she knows anything about the military anyway, but basically because Hegseth has said some anti-neocon things over the last several years. And that's the real opposition. I mean, the Democrats on the left don't like him because he's going to get rid of DI stuff and everything like that in the woke military. But that's the reason that it's a problem for a McConnell, for a Murkowski, even Susan Collins. So we got to figure a way to get rid of Murkowski I mean, she's up in 20, I think 28. So we're stuck with her for a while. But, they got to either get rid of the ranked choice voting or you got to do a write-in or something like that to get rid of this pathetic woman. Susan Collins is a different animal. She's always been a moderate. She's never claimed to be anything like this. Unlike Alaska, which voted Trump, I think it was 55, 41, 56, something like 14, 15, 16 points, something like that. Alaska went for Trump. Like, you go against your voters, your own state. In the case of Susan Collins, that's who she is. I mean, she was supposed to lose in 2020. She won by like 6 points, in a state that Trump lost, I think, by 8 or 10 points in 2020. So there is that crossover vote there. So it's going to be hard. And she's going to have a hard time, right? Because the midterms after a presidential year favor the other party that's not in power. After 9/11 with Bush, 2002 was the only real exception to that. But she's going to have a hard time because a lot of the Trump voters that came out to vote in 2020, well, they're out there. They voted for Collins. People particularly in Maine's 2 and stuff like and districts like that, right? Because Trump won Maine 2 by 10 points this year, but yet we can't win the congressional seat. We lost it by like half a point this year, and in 2022 we lost it by like 3 or 4 points. So it's that gap in voters that Susan Collins is going to miss unless we deliver and the Republican Party delivers for the Trump agenda. They then might be motivated to come out. Wow, Republican Party is shifting that way. And Susan, well, she voted against a couple of things. She voted for the tax bill and whatever, and a lot of the Trump agenda, and then maybe she can win. But I think it's going to be a hard time for her. So, I mean, primarying her is like, I don't think it's going to yield any fruit. The only way we're going to do that is to make these Trump voters permanent Republican voters, to make Maine competitive and then build on that. Okay, so if we abandon that, Maine will never be able to be flipped or in play in a presidential year. And then if Susan Collins goes down, we won't pick up a seat unless there's like a red wave election. So I say, with Susan. But she's now head of the Appropriations Committee, which that's a powerful committee, especially with the tax bill and everything coming up. So that's that. So I think he'll get confirmed. And then the effect of that will be, because I think you'll get the same kind of votes with Kash Patel for that. And then I think there might be a little bit more Republican opposition to Gabbard, but you could pick up a Democrat or two, and the same situation RFK. So they're not exactly the same as Pete Hegseth. So as we get closer to Tulsi and RFK, we'll look at that. And I believe his hearing, RFK's, is the 24th, which is tomorrow. So we'll keep an eye on that. I think Ratcliffe got confirmed. I don't have a problem with Ratcliffe. He did a great job at the end of the first Trump term with Russia collusion and all that stuff. He seems to be a loyalist. I think he's also got some neocon streaks in him, but that's good that he got through. So I guess that's his pick, But so moving on from the updates on the Trump nominations, let's just go through because we're not hearing about it. So we still got fires in LA. Huge fire in California now. 9,000 acres with zero containment. An estimated 31,000 people are under evacuation orders, and 23,000 are under evacuation warnings, says Sheriff Luna. The sheriff also stated that evacuation areas would be protected against looters. Please pray for these people. So, what's going on? Really? There's like no commentary on this. So, and we all know what's going on and the causes and the lack. And the Senate Democrats in the California State Senate just voted to not give $1 billion to fire prevention because it's got to go to DEI and drug programs and all this stuff. But fires, no problem. Oh, what scumbags those people are. So this is another something I found interesting. Dr. Patrick Soon Cheong sounds the alarm on mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. For the first time in my career, I've seen an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, and 10-year-old with colon cancer. So that jumped out at me personally because, well, I've done some commentary and videos on COVID in the past. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. We got turbo cancers. We got, people, I know a couple people like in their 40s who got RSV. What? That's infants get that, I know somebody who works at, in a therapy business and like they do deal with vertigo. They got 4 times the amount of patients after the rollouts. I know people who took the shots and they got vertigo. You got, that British MP who sounded the alarm on, the COVID, and you map this stuff on the graph. This all started with the excess deaths. There was a huge gap up in, starting in late 2021, 2022. Just a big gap up. If it's like some cultural shifts or problem with your foods and these diseases, you would see a gradual trend, right? No, this is, boom, a gap up, and then pretty consistent there. Okay? It's one of the reasons why, you have the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, Dr. Lapidow, really kind of hammering it and is not recommending it and going against the CDC and the FDA on these COVID shots. Well, not only is he an MD, but from what I understand, he has a PhD in medical statistics. You know, and you put all these things together. Yeah, that's what I say. There needs to be a major investigation on this. And just no one wants to touch it for a multitude of reasons, from the money, the liability, are there criminal acts involved, and that's it. Why do you think Biden pardoned Fauci? Okay, but you just look around. People, oh, I got COVID again. How many shots do you have? It's like if you take 6 shots, you get COVID 6 times. 7 shots, you get COVID 7 times. Okay, but people are getting things they shouldn't be getting. So that jumped out at me, and I wanted to share that. He's a doctor who's noticing things. And there have been lots of videos by doctors on the internet, other stories and studies, stating that what is it, hydrocephalus and neurological problems and things like that. And then, of course, the myocarditis issue. You got these 20-year-old healthy males just boop, dropping dead. You have all the soccer and athletes in Europe, who were a huge spike in that, dropping dead, going into cardiac arrest. Why? Because if you have the inflamed heart, if you're just walking, it's fine. But if you put the kind of rigorous activity on your heart, as a professional athlete does, when it's inflamed, it can lead to, electrical problems in the heart, and then you can go into cardiac arrest. So anyway, that jumped out at me because at least some people haven't forgot it, because we've kind of shifted from this with everything going on, from the election and everything that's going on in the world. But this is something we need to research and go back into and look into. Okay? And if you saw that list from Pfizer put out of all the side effects, it makes one of those commercials, where you get this and that and that. It's like, you could read on and on and on and on. I want to see all that trial data, public, on a website that everybody can access. And then the public will demand, I want full research on this and development. And remember, the key element on this is that in order to get a new vaccine without the 5-year rule, every other treatment cannot work. There are no other treatments available. And then what happens is, then you can get an emergency authorization. So you say to yourself, why was the media harping on ivermectin and hydrochloroquine, even though was proof all over it, and the marching orders went out. Fauci wanted the vaccine approach in order to get it immediately available, is that. And then they approved it, but they didn't approve the American one. Remember, it was the commodity one. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of legal stuff there. So no treatments available. It's all bad. So we can get this out. And then we have all these problems. So these decisions that were made go back to Fauci. And that's why Biden gave him the protection. But we need the answers. I can't prove it. I've seen enough to do red flags just by charting, looking at numbers, disability claims reports from out of Germany and the United States, spikes in different types of cancers. Just put it together. Okay, but that's all anecdotal. We need a professional study done on all this stuff. All right, so moving on, and this is the biggest thing that I'm going to focus on my video today. Okay, Trump put this out. Has to do with the Ukraine war. I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And this despite the radical left's Russia hoax. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60 million lives in the process. I don't think it was 60 million, but we know that Trump always likes to embellish a bit. All of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and we'll get into that, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. And the easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost. All right. So I agree. The premise. Let's make a deal. Absolutely. I want this war to end. There's several things in there that, though, I think are a little off. Now, it is my belief that when Trump gave like a casualty count, I think in the last week or two, when he was doing a presser or something like that, he was off. What I think happens is, and I've heard this consistently from other people and other sources, is that when there's a political agenda, not the exact information that analysts who specialize in this and the intelligence agencies, that exact data does not get to the people who need that data for whatever reason, because they want to make the president happy, they're pushing the neocon agenda in this case, etc. So that being said, I'm going to point out how I don't think the Russian economy is failing, and I'm going to bring up two items on that. And then the argument that it would have not happened, and I might agree with that, but we just don't know if Trump was still president. I don't think Putin viewed the Trump administration as a threat. They didn't really focus on that part. And Trump not being a globalist and trying to expand NATO and anything like that, the Russians didn't see it as a threat. It wasn't a strength issue. All right? Putin knew Trump is strong and was going to be decisive action if he thought it was necessary. But he also knew that Trump wasn't going to kill innocent people if not necessary. Just like when Iran hit down our drone, and then I think it was whoever it was went in and had a strike package on Iran, and Trump was like, is there going to be collateral damage to this counterstrike? And they said, yeah, probably civilian deaths. He's like, well, I'm not going to kill civilians, but no one died on our side. It was just a piece of equipment. So, again, that's the type of people Trump has to deal with, or is particularly in his first term. So let's go to the first thing about it. And this is key. Okay. This is an article, okay, that Colonel Douglas McGregor posted today on X. It's written by Dr. Michael Vlahos, I believe is security guy, security affairs and stuff like that at Johns Hopkins University. All right. So he's going into a little bit of the why, but I want to... this is about strategy and the theories about what the casualties should do and things like that. But I want to get to the key points that I want to point out to you, which is right about here. So in the first 18 months of the war, simply counting military obituaries and dead SIM cards comes to 330,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed in action. Moreover, more than 50,000 lost one or more limbs. Moreover, in the last 18 months, monthly losses intensified. Kiev itself has declared that the army needs 30,000 replacements a month just to maintain the current force. Okay, now keep in mind that there was a recent article in the Kiev Independent about how they decided that certain specialists in the Air Force will not be transferred to the infantry, but other personnel from the Air Force is. Now, why would you need to do that unless you're losing troops and you're not replenishing them? Okay? Does that mean that from September 2023 to date, another 540,000 soldiers were lost? Here, it is necessary to be mindful of what Soviet historians called irrevocable losses. Hence, a soldier who will never return to fight is irrecoverable, killed, crippled, missing. This is the true sum of an army's losses in a war. For Ukraine, arithmetic says that number is not less than 920,000 men. Yet not all of these are dead or crippled. Deserters are also present in a very real sense. Irrevocable casualties, irrecoverable casualties, as these are the able-bodied who have fled the country or have gone to ground inside Ukraine. Eurostat reports that 650,000 men in fighting age have fled Ukraine. Furthermore, reeling under the Russian hammer blows across the Donbass front, desertions are reportedly over 200,000 in 2024. Thus, Kiev has been forced to raise its monthly mobilization target from 30 to 40,000. Ukrainian journalists cite a desertion rate of 160 per day in early 2024, rising to 200 by summer, and then jumping to 380 by autumn. This suggests that desertion over the past year at least has accounted for a thick slice of irrecoverable losses, perhaps 4,500 to 5,000 men per month. The sudden surge in desertion after September 2024 has been driven by crushing exhaustion and defeat. This in turn has pushed the state to desperate measures. All, quote-unquote, conscription in Ukraine today takes the form of violent kidnapping, evening of the sick, aged, and infirm. Yet, in spite of the utmost brutality, that 40,000 per month target is now short about 20,000 each month. So, I think he nails it. I think those are the right numbers. Now, he's talked about kidnapping. I've posted videos about the kidnapping. I see them all the time. That I'm not just going to keep posting them. I see them all the time. Okay, brutal. They had to lower the mobilization age, conscription age, from 27 to 25. And now they're talking about going to 18. Okay? That means you need more men. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. Okay? You wouldn't sacrifice another generation if that was the case. And they're trying to conceal that. That's why we hear in the corporate media in the United States, Zelensky says, Ukrainian government says. Of course, because they don't want you to know. They don't want the American people to know how many people have been died, killed, or can't fight again. You know, if I lose my leg, I can't fight, even if I didn't die off the battlefield. And there are analysts and people who track because they have social media in Ukraine and in Russia. And they track obituaries. They track announcements of death announcements. You know, they use algorithms and they track this. Okay? Same in Russia. Okay? The Russia rate is far less than Ukraine by a lot. Okay? Remember, Russia sits back slowly and grinds. That's what Trump got right in that when he gave that presser, when he was doing the EOs. Yeah, we know Russia grinds. They don't throw people at people. They have units with radar packs that detect drones. So they know they're coming in. Boom. They shoot the coordinates to the closest type of either a missile system, some sort of strike system, or drones to track it, take out where it came from, and take out that drone, among other things. Okay? I've seen videos with independent reporters embedded with Russian units. I see how they fight. I also saw another video, I believe it was an Italian reporter, who embedded with a Ukrainian unit, they were ducking over because every time they popped their head out, artillery would just land on them. Okay? That's why, we're used to blitzkrieg, like we told the Ukrainians to do in the counteroffensive in summer of 23, which didn't work because they spent 6 months preparing defense. If you don't have air cover or match the defender's artillery, how can you do a blitzkrieg? But that's how we do it. That's not how they're doing it. Because they have the natural resources, the industrial base. They make many more, just 155 millimeter shells. Double what Europe and the United States can produce on a monthly basis. So they just lob it to death. Which is why I remember Waltz was on one of those Sunday morning shows, that's national security advisor to Trump, Waltz, talking about, well, maybe Ukraine should lower the age to 18, whatever. You don't lower the age unless you need to. And why would you need to? Because you're not able to sustain the bodies at the front. It's a simple arithmetic. So that's where it's at. So then oops. Here we go. Economy. Now I want you to look at this. Russia's budget revenue. This is Bloomberg. Russia's budget revenue surges to record low in December. Record level in December. See that? Oil and gas revenue, black. Non-oil and gas revenue. That's basically their taxes. Now, there are independent gas or privately owned gas and other sources in Russia, but they tend to serve the Russian people. Russia has several. The biggest one, Gazprom, is owned by the Russian government. They use the profits as part of their budget. It'd be like in the United States if the post office and Amtrak actually made profits and it went into the budget to fund other things. Okay, but as you see, let's go back to 2012. It's half the budget. 14, it's half the budget. 16, it's half the budget. 18, it's half the budget. And then there's spikes there, whatever, based going on in oil prices and things like that. But if you think about it, after the sanctions, blue is much higher. And they're actually sustaining with the sanctions, right? 22, 23, 24, all these exports with the sanctions. But their non-revenue is increasing dramatically. Next item. This is Russia's real GDP. All right. This slope up here is basically when the free-for-all after Yeltsin left took off. This spike down is the financial crisis. Russia's real GDP drifts up. This is the COVID era. And then boom. This is the beginning of the war. This is the initial American sanctions. And then Russia's been climbing ever since. Russia's economy is not in decline. I was looking up how many sanctions from what countries. It's thousands. Countries need their products. And domestically, they produce. They've cut deals. They've made close alliance. You have BRICS. And they're doing fine outside the system. And the other big thing that we do in the United States is we go, all right, here's our GDP. You convert it to their currency, and their GDP is whatever. But what they don't understand, and this is, I think, one of the things Tucker was trying to hit on when he went to Moscow and was shocked how cheap grocery prices are. It's called price parity, right? It's like if I go up from Tennessee to visit some family in New York, I remember I was on Thanksgiving. We stopped at a gas station. I picked up a 6-pack of Blue Moon. It was $12.99. By me, it's $9.99. That's, 20% difference, right? Rent, electricity, whatever. And that's within the same country. Well, that's the same thing in Russia. So we go, well, Russia only spends $250 billion on their military. Yes, but it costs them a third to a quarter less to build a tank, to build a missile. Okay? So they're not, because the real, in this case, ruble, is actually stronger for production and to the consumer within that nation than it is in just the basic conversion rate. It's called price parity. That's why when you look at the economy on price parity, so like the daily life of a Russian, their economy is actually now larger than Germany's because the cost of living is so much higher in Germany that if you just use the conversion and you factor that in, their GDP is actually less than Russia. Now, I think if you did it by population, Germany's still a little bit higher, but Russia's right there. But price parity, they're the biggest economy in Europe with all the resources. All right? So I saw another article, I think it was Bloomberg as well, it was talking about the revenues. In December, it was the last year or just December, the number came out December, okay? They reduced their debt, not deficit, debt, to by $27 billion. Debt. So their national debt, which is under 20% of their GDP, went down in dollars. Now, because of price parity, that's even a bigger gap. Okay. Meanwhile, we're adding, whatever it is now, $1 trillion every 100 days, $2 trillion, $2.5 trillion every year. They're not. They actually brought it down. Okay? So this idea that Russia's economy is not, they just announced a new cancer drug. They're, just, you could go. Travelers post videos. What's going on? St. Petersburg, Moscow, even down in the country. They're building, they're developing, So it's just a myth. And if you don't go there, you don't see it, you don't know anybody really lives there. Intelligence people say, Trump, they're a mess, and Trump will buy it because he's got to rely on people, about what's going on. But the fact of the matter is, they are better, stronger economically now than they've been in years. Okay? And they're stronger militarily because they've built up their military dramatically. And if you remember in 2022, Ukraine had all those victories. No, Russia realized we're not making the peace deal. They pulled back. Ukraine recovered it. That's why Milley was like, maybe we should negotiate now. Because he even knew the capacity. That was the sign this could be a grind. All right. So, moving on. I want you to remember this. This was the city of Volchansk in Kharkiv region. Now, you've seen hollowed out buildings before, like post-World War II Berlin. Buildings' walls aren't even there. Think that was hand-to-hand combat? No, that's artillery, missile strikes. So, showing you this. So this is Chasiv Yar, northern Donetsk area. Okay, they've now covered the entire northern part of the city. Have taken it over. And this has been a grind because there's been a canal in the eastern part of the city. There's industrial zones in the city, and Ukraine has been throwing reserves and troops into it, defending it, going street by street. Huge artillery, but they have now completely occupied the northern part of the city of Chasiv Yar. This is a map. Chasiv Yar is up in the north, and it shows you the pincers around it and how in this little gap, Russia's starting to push from the north and the south and the southern part, and they're starting to push out, and like I said, have secured Chasiv Yar in the north. This is in southern Donetsk. This is an area of Valakaya. Okay? They've completely surrounded. The Ukrainian troops are trapped in this area in another cauldron. I think there's a narrow area that they can get out from. But again, there'll be another area where they surrendered and so forth. Now, another thing I want to bring up too, quickly, was desertions. Remember? I showed videos of people jumping across the river into Romania. Russians have been sending out, effectively, radio transmissions to the Ukrainian troops. Put down your weapons. Come on over. We'll take good care of you. And they are. They're even going there and they're hanging out. Maybe they get a prisoner exchange. I don't know how it works. But yes, many Ukrainians have been surrendering. This is up in the north in the Kharkiv region near Kupiansk. There's a town here, I think it's called Vapada, was just taken over by the Russia. But you see how they're doing it? They secure a huge area and then they branch out one way and branch out another way. Okay, it's called like a blooming flower. And then it increases the defensive lines and thins out the territory that Ukraine now has to defend. Okay? And then you don't know where they're going to come next. Are they going to go out from the west, the north, the south? You don't know. So you have to thin it out. Okay? Now these are maps from a site called Deep State. It is a pro-Ukrainian site. But they confirm. I always confirm with Deep State when I hear a Russian map or analyst do something on the battlefield, because if they're on the same page, then I know that their sources are good, right? If both people on the side are saying the same thing just happened, well then you know it happened. All right, look at these arrows going west. Those are just Russian advances. It's northern Donetsk, southern Donetsk, all along the place. Now this is Pokrovsk in the eastern part of this here, just north of the red area, which is Russian territory. Okay? So they're kind of bypassing it. I said in my last video, they're striking now with artillery Pokrovsk directly. And then on the eastern part of Pokrovsk, they're surrounding it there. So they're basically doing their typical beginning of a cauldron maneuver. But here's the point I want to show you. See this yellow line up here? That is the line separating Dnipropetrovsk. Dnipropetrovsk is another oblast. It is the next oblast to the west of Donetsk. So at least in the southern half of Donetsk, they're done. After Pokrovsk, they're done. They got southern Donetsk done, completely under control. Northern Donetsk is even closer. You're looking at 90% of the entire oblast completely under Russian control. with Ukraine on the run. What is this? Red is Russian territory. Showing you this little part. This is a highway that goes from Konstantinovka to Pokrovsk. All right? There have already been Russian units that have reached it, and they're still battling over it. It's very open here, so it's very difficult for both sides considering the technology of drones and everything these days. But yeah, and Konstantinovka is one of the next areas after Chasiv Yar and a couple of the other areas fall. Toretsk is also close to falling. So in that region. So a completely highway transportation area that Ukraine uses to move equipment, people, and so forth is about to be cut off. So I'm showing you that. And you say to yourself, okay, in response to Trump's post on that, and that's why it's so important to get Tulsi and McGregor's and people like that around him, showing him really good information, is that Russia's 2 points are no NATO expansion, Ukraine will not be part of NATO, and two, these 4 oblasts particularly are definitely going to be part of Russia. End of story. They were independent. The Lugansk and Donetsk declared independence in 2014. They lost to the militias of those two. The Minsk Accords happened, brokered by Germany and France, and the deals weren't held up. Russia could have taken them then. They didn't. This time they moved in, they declared their independence, and then Pashinyan, the head of DPR, was like, we're going to stay with you, Russia. We can't go back to the Ukraine now. So that's it. They're going to join. So you're advancing on all these fronts. You know, Trump could say, oh, it won't come into NATO. Okay, but there could be another president who changes his mind. Okay, and then decides to arm the crap out of Ukraine and put lots of troops or maybe even a NATO base there, you know, west of the Dnieper River, something like that, even closer to Russia's borders. Okay, you're not afraid of the sanctions anymore. What can you do? People need their stuff. And the chart in their real GDP I was showing you, their revenues are going. Okay, and believe me, I've seen enough stuff there because I've seen enough videos and everything from, I watched part of an auto show in Moscow. They make smartphones, cars, like they got it all, you know. So they're not afraid of the sanctions anymore. They've learned to operate outside of them. And they've built international alliances. So that's not really a threat. So this way of threatening them is not the way to go, I think. And it could be a trap because I said in my last video, now you're putting the Ukraine war on Trump. Because if he says, you don't do this, I'll punish you this. Now you're hauled into this war. And now it's Trump's war just as much as Biden's war. And when it doesn't go well, you're losing your political capital. Especially when you promise to end it. You're going to have to make concessions if you really want to end this war. And you'll be saving the Ukrainian people. Okay? Because if you're Russia, and I'm showing you the success on the battlefront, militarily they're taking Donetsk, Lugansk, and then after that's done, they're going to focus more on Kharkiv in the north, and then they're going to focus on the rest of Zaporozhye and Kherson to the west as you get closer to Crimea. And then they'll focus on that. And they'll drive to the Dnieper River. Okay? The only way they'll do it, and they'll definitely score. Now, the question is if they stop, no deal, you won't be NATO. If they, you don't promise that, they'll just keep going. And if you are Russia, what are you going to do? Europe does not have the military to put in there. They'll just get striked and hammered, particularly by new Oreshnik missiles and Iskanders and all other types of things. The standing army of the British is 70,000. What is that? Most of that's support role. United States has 420,000 troops. They're all over the world and deployed. You can go to war? I don't think so. I know that's the last thing Trump wants, but I don't want him to get blamed when this doesn't go. But you have to put the pressure on Zelensky. All Trump has to do is the aid is over. You're giving up the 4. You promised no NATO. That's it. I believe Putin would take that. That's my gut feeling. He might ask for a couple little more things, a couple little more guarantees or somehow, But I just think that, there's still enough neocons in there still selling him, some of this crap. and he believes some of this crap. Okay, Russia is not at total war. They're not. They built up their military. They're rotating people out. They do that over the last 2-3 years. Once the peace deal fell apart in Istanbul, and they have it. And what they did is they went from a 450,000 military to about 1 million right now, 1.2, whatever it is. Okay? They got like 600,000 to 700,000 on the front, and they rotate them. But they hold 400,000 back, what they usually had, because that was their defensive style military. It was before the Ukrainian war. So they only had like 90 to 120,000 troops that went in. You also had the Donetsk and Lugansk militias as well. So that was part of the initial force when the special military operation started on February 20 in 22. So my point is that the threats aren't going to work, in my opinion, against Putin in this situation, and he risks putting this on him. Okay, because if no deal's made, he puts sanctions, he starts getting pissed, and then he owns this, and yet they keep moving west. So that's my thought on that. So anyway, I've been, and I think that article that I showed you really encapsulates the realities on the battlefield and what's going on, because they know. They know. You ever ask yourself, why aren't there any Western reporters in the Donbass with the Ukrainian army reporting? Because you can't, they don't want to show you what's really going on. Okay? So basically, if needs be, if there needs to be a total war, Russia would have a dramatic advantage and just do that. But like I said, because they want to build their economy, they don't want it to affect the average Republican, Russian citizen. Okay? It's a contract army. They sign up and whatever. So that's where it is. But they would have an advantage should that happen quickly if this war isn't fixed. But my belief is the concessions, because they're in the driver's seat. End of story. So that's my opinion on it. I saw that truth that he put out. I really wanted to respond to it because those are my thoughts. Anyway, so we'll be keeping an eye on the Hegseth final vote, which will be tomorrow night. Some of the other nominations going through, if I hear any news and so forth. I'll be posting anything that jumps out at me. Also, the situation in Pokrovsk that I mentioned as well. Any kind of peace talks that are going on. I've heard a couple rumors that Putin and Zelensky might talk. I don't know how true that is. Again, just rumors. But anyway, if you like this video, please follow, like, and share. And you can also follow me on my X at PatriotPlanner1 and at Getter at PatriotPlanner. All right. Until next time, have a great weekend, everybody.